The champagne glasses clinked around me, laughter echoing through the decorated garden. But all I could hear was my sister's fiancé's voice cutting through the celebration like a knife. Honestly, Maya, when are you going to get a real job instead of playing around with your little projects? His words hung in the air, and I felt every eye at that engagement party turn toward me. My sister Emma laughed, not the kind laugh I remembered from childhood, but something sharper, colder. Oh, Daniel's right. Maya's always been the dreamer in the family. We can't all be successful. My hands trembled around my glass of sparkling cider as my mother looked away. My father suddenly found his phone fascinating, and the 20 or so guests, colleagues from Fletcher and Associates, Emma's law school friends, distant relatives, all shared knowing smiles. They saw what they wanted to see, the struggling younger sister, the family disappointment, the girl who never quite measured up. But what they didn't know, what none of them could possibly know, was that in my purse, barely 3 feet away, sat an email confirming the biggest acquisition my company had made in 5 years. And the company I just purchased, the very marketing firm where Daniel worked as a senior account manager, where half the guests at this party earned their paychecks. I took a breath, smiled softly, and made a decision that would change everything. Should I tell them now, or should I wait? That question burned in my chest as I looked at my sister's happy, unknowing face, and I realized that sometimes the truth isn't just about facts. It's about timing, intention, and whether the people you love are ready to see who you really are. My name is Maya Sharma, and for the past 7 years, I've been invisible to my own family. Not literally, of course. I showed up for dinners, remembered birthdays, helped my parents with their taxes, but invisible in the way that matters. Invisible in their understanding of who I really was and what I'd built. At 32, I was the founder and CEO of Catalyst Digital, a mid-sized tech company specializing in AI-driven marketing solutions. We had 73 employees, offices in 3 cities, and annual revenue that would make most people's eyes water. But my family didn't know any of that. To them, I was still Maya who worked with computers, Maya who did something with websites, Maya who was always too busy to explain what she actually did for a living. My sister Emma, 2 years older at 34, was the golden child. Harvard Law School, a position at a prestigious firm, a perfect credit score, and now a perfect fiancé. Daniel Morrison was everything my parents had hoped Emma would find. Successful, well-spoken, from a good family, with a corner office at Fletcher and Associates, one of the city's top marketing agencies. What my family saw was a man who drove a BMW, wore expensive suits, and talked confidently about brands and campaigns. What I saw, from the very first time I met him 3 months ago, was someone who measured people by their perceived status and treated anyone he deemed below him with thinly veiled contempt. He'd never been outright cruel to me before tonight, just dismissive, small comments here and there. "Oh, Maya's here, still doing the tech thing?" Or, "It must be nice to work from home in your pajamas." I'd let it slide, partly because I loved my sister and didn't want to cause problems, and partly because I'd learned something important in business. You don't show your cards until the moment is right. My parents, Rajesh and Priya Sharma, had immigrated from India 38 years ago with dreams and determination. They'd built a comfortable life through hard work, dad as an accountant, mom as a nurse. They valued stability, credentials, and things they could understand and explain to their friends. Emma's law degree made sense. My tech startup? That was confusing, risky, and according to dad, not a stable career choice for a woman who should be thinking about marriage and family. I'd stopped trying to explain my work to them around year 3, when my mother asked for the 5th time if I'd considered going back to school to become a doctor. The engagement party was held at my parents' house, their backyard transformed with string lights, white linens, and floral arrangements that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Emma had insisted on perfection, and my mother had been happy to oblige, depleting their savings account to give her eldest daughter the celebration she deserved. I'd offered to help pay for it, anonymously, through my parents, but my mother had been insulted. "We don't need your little earnings, beta. Save your money." If she only knew that my little earnings could have paid for 50 parties like this without making a dent. I'd arrived early to help set up, wearing a simple navy dress, my hair pulled back, minimal makeup. I've never been one for flash, despite being able to afford it. Most of my wealth was reinvested in the company, in my employees' futures, in innovation. I drove a 5-year-old Honda, lived in a modest downtown apartment, and wore my grandmother's simple gold chain instead of designer jewelry. Daniel had arrived in his BMW, making sure everyone saw it, heard it, noticed it. He'd brought colleagues from Fletcher Associates, Marcus, Jennifer, and Samir, all of them dressed to impress, all of them talking loudly about their latest campaign for some luxury watch brand. $60,000 budget, Marcus had announced to anyone within earshot. Daniel closed the deal himself. I'd been arranging chairs when I overheard Jennifer whisper to Samir, "Which one is the sister?" "The one in the plain dress by the chairs. Emma said she does something with computers, freelance, I think." The mockery started subtly during dinner. Daniel had stood up, champagne glass in hand, to make a toast. To Emma, his voice carrying across the garden. "The most brilliant, successful, beautiful woman I've ever known. You've achieved everything you've set your mind to, and I can't wait to build a life with someone who matches my ambition and drive." The emphasis on "matches my ambition" felt deliberate, especially when his eyes flickered toward me just for a second. Then came the conversation that ignited everything. Dessert had been served, and Daniel's colleague Marcus had asked me, making conversation, "So, Maya, what do you do?" "I work in tech," I said simply. "Oh, like IT support?" Jennifer jumped in. "That's great, so practical. Everyone needs tech support." Before I could respond, Daniel had laughed. No, Maya's more of an entrepreneur type. She does, what is it, Maya? Website consulting?" The table had gone quiet, waiting for my response. This was my moment to correct him, to tell the truth, but something held me back. Perhaps the way Emma was looking at me with pity, or my mother's embarrassed expression, or my father's resigned sigh. "Something like that," I said quietly. And that's when Daniel launched into his speech about real jobs, and my sister piled on with her comment about dreamers. The words landed like physical blows, and what made it worse was that nobody defended me. Not my parents, not my sister, not the cousins and family friends who'd watched me grow up. I'd excused myself to the bathroom, closed the door, and leaned against the sink, breathing slowly. My phone buzzed. An email from my COO, David. "Congratulations, Maya. The Fletcher and Associates acquisition is complete. We finalize Monday. They have no idea who bought them. This is going to be interesting." I stared at those words, my heart pounding. Fletcher and Associates, Daniel's company, the place where he'd built his entire identity, where Marcus and Jennifer and Samir all worked, where half the guests at this party earned their paychecks. I returned to the party with a calm I didn't feel. The evening continued with more toasts, more laughter, more stories about Emma and Daniel's perfect romance. I smiled when expected, hugged when approached, and stayed quiet when the conversation turned to career success. My Aunt Mira pulled me aside near the dessert table. "Maya, beta, you know your mother worries about you. When are you going to settle down, find a nice, stable job, maybe meet a good boy?" I'd heard this 1,000 times. "I'm happy where I am, Auntie." "But doing what exactly? Your sister, now she has security, a real profession. You should think about your future." The implication was clear. I was failing at life while Emma was succeeding. What they didn't understand was that I'd made a deliberate choice to keep my success private. In the early days, I'd tried to share my wins with my family. When I landed my first major client, I'd excitedly told my parents at dinner. My father had nodded politely and asked if I'd thought about getting health insurance. When my company hit its first million in revenue, I'd mentioned it to Emma, who'd responded, "That's great. Is that profit or just revenue? Because revenue doesn't really mean anything." After a while, I'd stopped sharing. It was easier to be the disappointing daughter who worked with computers than to constantly defend and explain my choices. The party wound down around 11. Guests began leaving, thanking my parents for their hospitality, congratulating Emma and Daniel repeatedly. I'd started helping clean up when Daniel approached me, loosening his tie. "Hey, Maya, no hard feelings about earlier, right? I was just joking around." There was no apology in his voice, just a casual dismissal of the hurt he'd caused. "Sure," I'd said, stacking plates. If you ever want to get serious about your career, I could maybe put in a word at Fletcher and Associates. We sometimes need contractors for basic website stuff. Won't pay much, but it's something." The condescension dripped from every word. This man, who worked at the company I now owned, was offering me charity work. "That's very kind of you," I'd replied, keeping my voice neutral. Emma had joined us, wrapping her arm around Daniel's waist. "Isn't he sweet? Always trying to help people." She'd looked at me with genuine sisterly concern. "You should take him up on it, Maya. It might be good for you to work somewhere structured, learn how real businesses operate." That had stung more than anything Daniel said. My own sister, the person who'd shared a bedroom with me for 18 years, who'd been my best friend through childhood, truly believed I was floundering while she was thriving. As I drove home that night, I kept replaying the evening. The laughter at my expense, the pity in people's eyes, my mother's embarrassed expression when her friends asked what I did, my father's silence, Emma's well-meaning condescension, and Daniel's smug offer to throw me scraps from his table. Monday morning, I'd be walking into Fletcher and Associates as their new owner. Daniel would discover that his boss, and his boss's boss, now answered to me. The entire company that had built his ego would be under my control. But the question that kept me awake that night wasn't about business. It was about family. How do you reconcile loving people who don't really see you? How do you bridge the gap between who they think you are and who you actually are? And when the truth finally comes out, will it bring you closer together or tear you further apart? I spent Sunday preparing for Monday's meeting with my leadership team and the Fletcher and Associates executives. Our acquisition was strategic. Fletcher was struggling financially despite their prestigious reputation, and their client list and talent pool were exactly what Catalyst Digital needed to expand our marketing division. David, my COO, had orchestrated the purchase through several intermediaries, keeping my identity hidden until the final signing. This was standard practice in acquisitions, but in this case, it served a dual purpose. Monday morning, I dressed in my usual professional attire, a tailored charcoal suit, minimal jewelry, my hair in a neat bun. I looked exactly like what I was, a CEO about to meet her newest acquisition. The Fletcher and Associates office occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. I arrived with David and our legal team, and we were escorted to the main conference room. The Fletcher executives were already there. Thomas Fletcher himself, the founder, who was retiring, their CFO, Rebecca, and the senior management team, including Daniel Morrison. I watched his face as I entered the room. Confusion first, what was I doing here? Then recognition as he remembered I did something with computers, but not understanding. Not yet. Thomas Fletcher stood, extending his hand. "Ms. Sharma, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. I've heard remarkable things about Catalyst Digital." "Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. I'm looking forward to this partnership." Daniel was staring now, his expression shifting from confused to uncomfortable. Rebecca began the presentation, outlining the transition plan, reporting structures, and integration timeline. 15 minutes in, she displayed an organizational chart. At the very top, Maya Sharma, CEO, Catalyst Digital. Below that, cascading down through various divisions and departments, every single Fletcher and Associates employee, including Daniel Morrison, Senior Account Manager, now reporting through 3 layers of management that ultimately answered to me. I watched understanding dawn on his face. His skin went pale, then flushed red. Around the table, the other Fletcher executives who'd attended the engagement party, I now recognized Marcus and Jennifer among the senior staff, were having similar realizations. After the meeting, Daniel approached me in the hallway. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. "Maya, I had no idea. You're the CEO of Catalyst Digital?" "I am," I said calmly. "But you, at the party, you said you did website consulting." "No, Daniel, you said that. I just didn't correct you." He ran his hand through his hair, panic setting in. "Look, about what I said at the engagement, I was joking, you know that, right? It was just party talk." "Was it?" I kept my voice professional, detached, because it seemed fairly genuine to me. I didn't mean anything by it. Please, Maya, I love your sister. I don't want this to become a thing. And there it was. Not an apology for the hurt he'd caused, but fear for how this might affect his relationship and his career. Whether this becomes a thing is entirely up to you, Daniel. I'm here as the CEO integrating a new acquisition. I have no interest in personal vendettas. I expect all Fletcher employees to maintain professionalism and performance standards. If you can do that, we'll have no problems. The relief on his face was palpable. Of course, absolutely, thank you. As he walked away, I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a deep sadness that the man my sister was about to marry had shown me exactly who he was, and I couldn't unlearn it. That evening, Emma called me. Maya, Daniel just told me everything. Why didn't you tell us you own a company, a real company? I could hear the excitement and confusion in her voice. I tried to tell you, Emma, many times over the years. Nobody really listened. There was a long pause. What do you mean? When did you try to tell us? Do you remember when I landed my first major client? When I hired my first employee? When we moved into our first office? I mentioned all of it, and everyone just nodded and changed the subject, or asked when I was going to get a real job. Another pause, longer this time. I don't remember it that way. I know you don't, I said gently, and that's part of the problem. We talked for over an hour. I explained how it felt to be dismissed by the people I loved most, how I'd eventually stopped sharing my life because it was easier than constantly feeling diminished. Emma cried. She apologized repeatedly, saying she'd never meant to make me feel that way, that she'd just assumed I would speak up if I was doing well. But I did speak up, I reminded her. You just didn't hear me. The following Saturday, I invited my family to Catalyst Digital's office. All of them, my parents, Emma, and yes, even Daniel. I gave them a tour, introduced them to my team, showed them the Innovation Lab where we developed our AI algorithms, the Client Success Center where we managed accounts for some of the world's biggest brands. My mother cried when she saw my name on the CEO door. My father stood in my corner office, looking out at the city view, speechless. Emma held my hand as we walked through the open workspace where employees called out greetings and asked me quick questions about ongoing projects. They saw me in my element, saw the respect my team had for me, saw the empire I'd built from scratch. After the tour, we sat in my office. My father spoke first. Maya, Beta, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry. I thought you were just playing around on computers, my mother added, tears streaming down her face. I thought you needed help, needed guidance. I didn't know you were this. Daniel sat quietly, humbled. Emma squeezed my hand. I've been a terrible sister. No, I said firmly. You've been a sister who didn't understand. There's a difference. I looked at each of them. I don't need you to understand every aspect of what I do, but I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing with my life. I need you to respect my choices even when they don't look like the choices you would make. And I need you to really listen when I talk about my life, instead of waiting for me to fit into the box you've created for me. 3 months later, I stood in the same backyard where Emma's engagement party had been, but this time, the celebration was different. My company had just been named one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country, and my parents had insisted on hosting a gathering to celebrate. The guest list was different too. My employees, my friends, people who'd always seen me clearly. Emma and Daniel were there, their relationship stronger, actually, because the truth had forced them both to grow. Daniel had apologized sincerely eventually and had proven himself to be a dedicated employee at Fletcher & Associates. He'd learned humility, and Emma had learned to question her assumptions about success and worth. My parents introduced me to their friends differently now. This is our daughter Maya. She's a CEO, my mother would say, pride evident in her voice. It wasn't about the title for me, though. It was about finally being seen. As the evening wound down, Emma found me by the garden lights. I've been thinking, she said, about what you said that day in your office, about listening. I want to do better. You already are, I told her honestly. She'd been asking me about my work, really asking, really listening to the answers. She'd started reading about technology and innovation, not to understand every detail, but to understand the world I loved. I'm proud of you, she said softly. I should have said that years ago. I hugged my sister, feeling the distance between us finally closing. The truth hadn't destroyed my family, it had saved us, because now they didn't just love the Maya they thought they knew, they loved the Maya I actually was. And that, I realized, as I looked around at the people gathered in that familiar backyard, was worth more than any business success, any acquisition, any amount of money in the world. Sometimes the greatest flex isn't showing people what you have, it's showing them who you are and giving them the chance to truly see you. The rest, that's just details.